I wanted to record this video as a little bit of an introduction to Lydia's race debrief video about to follow. And the reason I wanted to do that is because I really wanted to stress how difficult this video was for Lydia to record. It's quite a sensitive and emotional and challenging subject for her to discuss. And I also want to remind you that Lydia does have some personal challenges around her ASD that do make this a really difficult thing for her to do in terms of communicating in a nice, clear way that most of us would understand. So please do bear that in mind when you watch this video. Please do try to understand how difficult this was for her to do and how tricky she finds this topic to discuss. So please do remember that when watching this and making your assessment of her as well. I think she did a great job. Okay, so it's Monday post-race, so we're going to get a little bit of a race debrief from Lids. So Lids, what are your post-race thoughts, feelings and reflections of race day, and how do you feel about your overall race execution?
Yeah, so this was my third Ironman. So I've had various experiences over full distance, and so again it's still like a little bit into the unknown. So that's what I was quite excited about leading into the race, was another opportunity to learn more about full distance racing. In terms of post-race thoughts, feelings, etc., how do I feel about my overall race execution, I'll break it down into swim, bike and run, and even before the race as well. So night before the race, no one sleeps well. I was probably up every hour, it felt like waking up, checking the time, was it nearly time to get up, had my alarm gone off? So yeah, I was nervous, and race day morning, like trying to get my rice pudding down, and that's just normal pre-race nerves, which is a good thing because it's always daunting over full distance, as you have no idea how the body's going to respond, and it's such a flipping long day. So it was pretty cool when we got down to the race start. Again, that reality moment sets in, but I just take that time, compose myself and think this is really cool. And what I try and do before every single race is have a look around and think, do you know, for about 1,000 athletes I think racing, we're all about to go start this day and share this experience together, and just focus on that. So got down to the swim start, and it's like, that's it, game face on type thing. Just relax, enjoy it, compose yourself. And it started off quite well. So the gun went off, and it felt quite good. I swam with Jean and Fiona. It was quite a good group dynamic. So I was quite happy with that in terms of execution. I had to work through that decision-making process of, like, RPE-wise, it felt very good. But I knew that if I was swimming solo, I would be putting out more energy and not actually gaining anything. And had already gone off quite hard from the start. So there's no point in even trying to think about like chasing. At that point, it was okay, this is a good group to be in. We can work together and make this swim really count in a different way. It also helps where technically I'm not the most efficient swimmer, just allowing me to focus on just stay on the feet, stay on the group, and then I can focus on form and relax into my swim in a different way, where like my competence level isn't that high in a swim. I have to really focus. I'm either good at focusing on the feet in front of me, where I'm going, or technical form, and then something else is compromised as a result of that. So it was a best case scenario really for that swim dynamic. So Aussie exit happened, actually felt quite good coming out, not usually the case, so happy with that. Second loop, again, pretty much consistent with that. So I was happy with how the swim went overall, and it was nice that I feel like my swim fitness is starting to move in the right direction, because I didn't come out the swim feeling absolutely broken. So that was encouraging. So going to transition, one of the things that I really focus on is just don't rush, because the more you try and rush and move through quickly, you're actually probably going to take more time. So I was actually pretty slick. So I was happy with my overall like sort of execution of transition, and then ran through to my bike, headed out. It was a massively steep ramp, but it didn't feel too bad. I've been a bit worried about that, but it wasn't too bad. So headed out onto the bike along the Avenida, so it's just a really long straight section right along the seafront. Just made sure I got little things right, like tightening my shoes, took on a gel, prep myself to really then start to get into the rest of the bike leg. So heading out onto the bike, you initially go up, there's a lot of climbing for the first part of the course, and the first hill is pretty steep, and it keeps on going and going and going. My heart rate was going up quite high, but I was okay with that at that point in time, given where it was in the race. Just trying to like settle in, find that rhythm. So I was just kind of patient with myself at that point. And again, it's the same for the second climb going up. Just tried to focus on rhythm, knowing it's going to be unsettling, but you kind of have to pretend it's like a little bit of a mountain bike race at the start, or just be really comfortable with being uncomfortable, and know that at points in the course you're going to be going down, so you can relax and settle into it a little bit more. So the bike is usually where I find that flow. Like, I'm really peaceful on the bike, and I'm like, right, this is the point now. Like, I managed to kind of mitigate losses as such on the swim. Now I can just really set in and get doing my thing. It didn't really happen this time. I've had some really good training rides, indoors and outdoors, but I just didn't really ever find that flow during this point, which is okay. Like, I kept thinking, maybe next kilometre, maybe the next kilometre. I kept focusing on what I could control, so taking on like nutrition, making sure I'm just looking around at where I'm at as well, like, and just enjoying it, because the more you focus on, if you start to focus on the negatives, then you're going to think about it in a not so brilliant way of wanting to get off the bike. So I was like, okay, look, I can control my attitude and mindset, I can control my nutrition, I can focus on technique, trying to be as efficient as possible, and also just keep thinking. Like, at points in time, I remember like a couple of years ago, I thought I'm having a really, really bad bike day, and I've come away and it's actually been, on reflection, quite a good bike split. So always remaining open-minded to it. So it wasn't the bike leg that I was looking for, in terms of, I thought I'd be probably about 7 to 10 minutes quicker than what I was, especially with the conditions as they were as well, because it's a very, very low wind day for Lanzarote. So it wasn't the bike leg I was looking for, and I got into T2, and again I thought, okay, just be patient. Like, my legs they never feel brilliant, do they? I got in and I was like, okay, like, reset, it's next chapter in the day. I didn't rush putting on my socks, made sure my shoes are all sorted. What I'd done, which actually worked really well, was to put a little bag with my sunnies, visor, some nutrition, and a little like sports bottle, just to take straight with me, which actually helped, I think, with efficiency through transition. So I could just grab that, get my trainers and socks on, and again, it's just less things to fiddle and faff around with. So I was happy with how that process went, and it meant then going straight out on the run, I had nutrition straight away and was able to start to get that on. Going out on the run, like, I kind of felt like I knew what I could deliver. What I was suffering with, which I haven't really experienced before, was quite a lot of lower back tightness. So it restricted that range initially, but again, it's like, right, okay, you're not going to feel ace, so suck it up, princess, and let's just like see what we've got, get yourself into that rhythm. The first like sort of big loop out was more about, let's just settle in. You're going into the wind, particularly around like the latter part of the first loop. So settle in, don't fight it, and just find flow, relax, focus on breathing. Like, it's really cool because you can start to see everyone out on the course again, so that always helps with a little like boost as well. And it just turned into a bit of a struggle of a run, really. I again was like optimistic that maybe next kilometre I'll start to find that range. I was aware of like pace, RPE and heart rate throughout, and again just didn't really find the flow that I was looking for, and based on what I've been doing in training, it wasn't the run I was expecting. And I come into the race in second place, like into transition. I knew what the split was to Jean behind, and towards the latter part of the run, like, she was having an absolutely cracking day. Like, she was on good form from Gran Canaria, and I was really hoping she was going to have a good day here as well. And she came past me, she looked super smooth, and I just couldn't at that point just hold and pick up the pace. So again, I just had to focus on, okay, how can I make the most of this experience and day? And one of the most important things that I've learned from racing, and this is how I like reflect on the racing, it's not just about like the splits as such. It's about my overall thought process and that execution. And one of the things that always I focus on is, okay, right, even if the day's not going to plan, how can I still get valuable learning from this? So that was what I was like, right, it might not be perfect in terms of how I felt across the bike and the run, but I still need to make sure that I've raced in a way that I can look back on and take something meaningful from it, because racing is a data point to then work from to feed into the process next. So if I've kind of sabotaged the race as such by negative thinking, that's a variable that I can't then actually, if I'd have thought differently, would the splits have gone differently? So that's what I always focus on, is okay, right, even if it's not perfect, what can I still take away from it, and how does that feed into how I go, like, then think about my decision making around my training and other development areas going forwards as well. So I know I achieved third overall, but it's, in terms of like my post-race thoughts and feelings, it's a bit bittersweet with how I feel about how the day went. It's a day that, based on how I felt my training and the build-up had gone, I'd anticipated a different performance overall, which is, when you put a lot into that one day, it's always a bit of a, you want it to go to plan, you have to prepare yourself that things aren't always going to plan. That's a sport, isn't it? So it's not the day that I felt that I know I'm capable of. I know what I did back in 2022, but it's a data point to work from, so I have to look at it a little bit more pragmatically. You obviously put a lot of emotion into your preparation, a lot of people support you in the build up to the races, and you want to be able to go out there and showcase your hard work, because that's the day you should be out there and celebrating and enjoying it and sharing the experience with so many others as well. But so even though my race didn't go to plan, I'm also really hyped because I got to share the day with all the other athletes that we had from Passion Fit, and I saw them put together some exceptional days, which that always makes it, it's not about my race, like, even though it wasn't perfect, it's all about the journey experience that we all get to share together, and that's what made it for me. So I'm not looking back and thinking, all right, just because my race didn't go to plan, I'm not then like in a pit of despair about it. I'm looking at, actually, do you know what, it was a really awesome day for everyone. I saw Michelle, Ian, Tom and Richard all have really good days, and that's what also like helps, is where we shared that day together, shared the build up, shared the process, look back and think that's what I'm going to remember.
So now, in hindsight, is there anything you'd change or anything you'd do differently at all?
Yeah, so I break this down by looking at sort of the before and during the race. So I'll start with the before. So I'm looking back over the past, say, 6 months to really understand, okay, what are the things that I did do well, not so well, and what are the opportunities that I could have taken that might have had a different impact on how the overall race execution went. So this is so I can learn about it going forwards, and then again modify my process if I need to, or think, actually, do you know what, that was spot on and there's nothing else that I need to change. So for me, over winter, I went through a quite a good process, a really, really liberating process about finding more about myself, and put some info out about this. So I went through a process of understanding whether I had autism spectrum disorder. And it's something that I found in loads of different scenarios I haven't coped as well as the majority do. So the social situations, change of routine, honestly the list is absolutely endless. So I went through that process, and then ended up, so the diagnosis came out as, yes, I do have ASD, which was brilliant to help give me that clarity, understand more about myself and who I actually like really am, so I can work with that, understand what my strengths are, and not be as frustrated with myself for certain other elements, but look at how I can put coping strategies in place so I'm bridging that gap to build more balance, basically. So when I look back now, I spent a lot of time from January through to now between like Lanzarote and the UK, and I think back, when I look back, and I always think about things in like that sort of bigger picture scenario. When I was in 2021, when we were in lockdown, I had some of my most consistent, effective, high quality training to date, and that carried me through into 2022 quite nicely. And that actually was because of routine and consistency. Everything was the same every day. Like, lockdown in a weird way provided that sort of security, like you knew where you were at. We didn't have the opportunity to go away racing, to go on training camps. And when I look back now, I'm thinking actually that time frame from like January onwards, I might be more effective if I'd have stayed in the UK. I know that the weather isn't conducive. I'd have had to have come away at some point for a training camp, but I think I wouldn't have come away for as longer durations at a time, because having that consistency around environment and routine, my equipment and training facilities in the UK actually helps me to train more effectively, more efficiently. I find it less stressful as well. So when I'm away, I'm having to make different decisions around like pool timetables, the weekly structure and routine, indoor versus outdoor training. And I think for me, I find that harder to work with. Some people are really effective and are able to dynamically adjust, and I know for me that hasn't been the case. So I think the time frame away from the UK has been too great, and for me, just having that sense of routine every single week would have helped me to pro train more effectively, and also constantly evaluate the data points I can get from training in a different way to how I've been able to do that whilst out here. Okay, so what would I do differently during the race? So I'm only going to talk about the bike leg of Ironman Lanzarote, and the reason for this is because retrospectively I would have made different decisions about my execution during that. I will provide context on this, but this is in relation to 3 key areas and a situation that I found myself in now, which is why I'd have made different decisions. So I'm going to talk about 3 rules. So the rule around pacing and drafting. So the rules are really clear that another athlete cannot draft. They can ride behind another athlete, but they can't draft them. So we know about the 12 metre drafting rule. Another rule is that an athlete cannot sabotage their own race to support that of another athlete. And the third rule is no on-course coaching between athletes, or an athlete and a coach. So the reason that I'm talking about these rules and my decision making during the race is I found myself in an unexpected situation where I was biking in proximity to Tom, which wasn't expected. So I, in the last couple of years of doing this race, have always outsplit Tom on the bike. Tom's split since doing this race have always been quite consistent within each other. So it was an unexpected scenario I found myself in, and I wish I'd have made different decisions now because of the perspective that there is around Tom's role on the course in relation to my bike split on the day. So I've already said that I wasn't having a strong day on the bike for me. I was off the pace, and I found myself in that situation where I needed to focus, and if I'd have been with another male age group athlete, another female pro athlete, I would have executed the bike leg in the way that I did, of having that focus point to keep going. Like I said, one of the questions that might be asked is, well, if you can see this now in terms of the perspective, I've looked at the timing map data and can understand if you're only looking at that one data point, how that perspective could be formed. At that moment in time during the race, like I said earlier, I'm really good, and like I said in the swim, I'm really good at focusing at one thing at a time, which in Ironman racing is brilliant when you know you've got to get from A to B and just keep going and don't stop until he finished, and be able to block everything else out. This was to my detriment, that ability to be able to do that during the race, as I wasn't then able to dynamically assess that situation to be able to then adjust my decision-making process based on the dynamic I found myself in. From my perspective, I had an official moto with me throughout the whole duration of the race, and I didn't have any, there was never any intervention from the officials during the race or afterwards as well, to suggest that the dynamic that was playing out with myself biking in proximity to Tom was any concern from their perspective. I have other athletes who were on the course as well, who have also been willing to give evidence to support that it was just racing. Obviously now looking back, I wish I'd made a different decision. The responsibility came with me to have changed the way that I carried on biking during the race. Obviously I wasn't having a strong day. It transpires that Tom was having a pretty decent day for him on the bike as well. And I guess people might ask, well, why wasn't there, if I know I said I wasn't necessarily aware, was Tom aware of that situation? Well, no, we saw each other at points on the time mats where the course naturally overlapped. People might say, well, why didn't he intervene? Well, like I said, that would be in total violation of no coaching on course rule, which could have resulted in disqualification for us both, and potential implications as well with being able to race future Ironman events too. It was never Tom's responsibility to make a decision. We're both there, and like as soon as you get to the start line, you're an athlete and an athlete. He's, in my eyes, and I know this isn't necessarily seen now, realising with the awareness that I have and what's been highlighted to me following the race from other sources, people might see it that he was my coach on course. When I get to the start line, when we both get to the start line, he's just another athlete, I'm just another athlete, and that's how I see it. So I treated him as just another athlete on the course on that day. I wish now, looking back, I had decreased, just changed how I rode. I would have allowed a larger gap to have happened, and I guess the questions might be, well, why would you do that? You're racing there professionally. That's irrelevant. I would have. It would have been the right thing to do, and for the situation and the negativity that this has created afterwards as well, for me making sure that didn't happen, with how I now feel after the race and feel about the race, because as much as, like I said at the start, it was obviously an awesome day for everyone at Passion Fit and that race, how I now feel about that race and the execution it has put, and the conversations that we've had through external sources around the perception around the time mat data, nothing would have. I would have rather, just stopped cycling and let a couple of minutes gap form, and then carried on executing my own bike split instead, and made sure that there was a gap in a way that couldn't be perceived as anything other than us, just to get a gap there, so that there would be no, the perception couldn't ever be questioned at at all. What was the question?
What are the key things you've learned or like taken away?
Yeah, so in terms of the key learnings and takeaway points from this race, so I've obviously learned a lot in like how I think, my judgment, decision making, and I need to make sure I go away and like reflect properly on the how and why, the how and why behind that, and I never use my ASD as an excuse at all, but this does have potentially have an impact and change my perception of like situations, and that might have played a part in during this race as well, and to others who might see things in a more neurotypical way, their like sort of perception and during the race and decision making could have been different. So I'm not really sure on like the answer in terms of how I go away and evaluate. What I do know is that I'm still learning. Like I said at the start, like I've only started to realise, like find out more about myself since going through this ASD diagnosis process, and trying to learn like and understand how to live with it in a way that only adds positives to my journey, but also I'm never going to use it as an excuse to not look for further ways to develop and implement strategies and ways. That means that some things are like obviously brilliant, and like that ability to just intensely focus on one thing can be like an absolute superpower. Actually, in this instance, it was a limiter, and I need to make sure that because of the way that I think in certain situations and scenarios, that I then don't ever allow that to become to be detrimental again. So that's what I need to go away on, and understand how I can put little different methods in place, so that I am learning to adapt, improve and develop as well. So that's going to be the key focus point for me going forwards, is how I can like use this as a self-development opportunity, and continue to make sure that I'm like learning different methods of how to adjust and adapt. And just to end on a positive, I just want to say a massive thanks to all of the other elite females who are racing, other athletes as well who have provided a lot of support during and after the race as well. It really means a lot. And also to the Ironman Lanzarote team, they did an exceptional job of like stepping the race up a whole nother level. So thank you to absolutely everyone out there on the course. Your support is beyond appreciated.